So what surprises me within this video was the concept of public housing in the past, which mainly was designed for the white, lower, and middle class families. Rothstein also stated that schools are more segregated today in this country than at any time in the last 45 years, because many neighborhoods are so segregated. Yes, I've learned about the various events of the civil rights movement, and most of the history was known to me. This video reveals more details about the concept of racism existing throughout history, and he introduced the term de facto and de jure segregation, and how that heavily affected individuals, especially African American population in America. He exposes many of the controversial things and the strategies that the government had used on whether or not an amendment should be passed to favor the integration of public housing, and he emphasizes how American governments deliberately imposed racial segregation on urban areas in the US. What do I know about my community and the local zoning policies during the 20th century? Well, I do know that the impact of redlining still occurs today within the Kentwood cities. And then how segregated or integrated is my community? I feel that my community is pretty integrated, but there are some segregated neighborhoods found in certain parts of the town where I live. I feel that the community would be more diverse, integrated, and unified with a fair share of middle class, minority, and low moderate income housing. Is there anything missing from the color of law that might modify its argument? I feel like Rothstein had covered all of the main topics and issues regarding housing segregation. However, I do want to add on to that because people would also believe that the segregation in housing is not mainly the result of the government policies and actions, but it also stems from the systemic racism and biases in our country as a whole. Some might argue that the problem is much more complex and intensely ingrained within American society, which affects the housing pattern and opportunities in our communities today. If my community and our school are racially segregated, has this resulted in fewer interracial friendships? Yes, the chances of interracial friendship would be less likely to occur. And then some of the consequences of missing out on cross-racial friendship, I would say that the person would be socially isolated. They would have stereotypes and prejudice. There would be limitations on their perspective of people with unique backgrounds and ethnicity. And they would miss out the opportunities to learn about different cultures. One thing that I would like to better understand about my home or community and how I came to live here, I would say that I would like to learn more about the behavior of the groups with different cultural backgrounds and how they interact with one another within my community. I feel that it is important to learn and understand the historical facts regarding the housing policies in Grand Rapids. And then was I surprised that Chief Justice John Roberts got his facts wrong, as Rothstein has stated. And I was a bit surprised, but not entirely surprised that Chief Justice John Roberts got his facts wrong, because it is not uncommon for people, even those with power or public authority, to make mistakes or make comments that they shouldn't be making. I've seen public figures representing the state and sometimes the government often get their facts wrong. And this history was well known to me, but it was not always widely shared and understood deeply by others. I would say that how it is shared can influence society. Thus, it is important that these public figures or individuals have the correct information on the things that they're going to talk about publicly. And some of the unanswered questions that I have after reviewing this documentary would be, what are some potential steps that can be taken to address the current consequences of residential segregation? in order to create equity of housing for everyone? And then how can policymakers and advocates make sure that unbiased housing laws are implemented so that these violations can be prevented?